Money does not bring happiness.
Did life change with all of that wealth?
My largest paycheck before starting Suburban was 5,700 rupees.
What goes on behind the big numbers that you see on the dashboard? At which point in your own journey did you feel that you have enough wealth?
I think first build value. Valuation is an outcome of building value.
Doc, you're one of the few founders in India who've delivered an exit to their venture capital fund and in the process created wealth for yourself also. At which point in your own journey did you feel that you have enough wealth? Was it when Suburban was established and running a profitable concern, or was it before that? How was that experience?
Difficult question to answer. I mean, I don't know if anybody will ever say they have enough wealth. I think for me, wealth is the ability to have the freedom to do what you want, I think. It's really not going to change quality of life significantly, because I'm very fortunate to have a good quality of life thanks to my family and the support that I got. So I think for me, this wealth is more a social security for the family, create a security nest so that people are able to, in my family, are able to follow their passions and not having to work for money, but do what they really want because they have the support of this corpus now available to them. I don't want wealth to ever be a deterrent of ambition and aspiration.
Okay.
What happens is sometimes when so the next generation now is aware of the capital that is there in the family. I don't want this to become that, oh, now I don't need to do anything. In fact, this should be a motivator that I've got this capital. What can I do to put it to good use?
Yeah.
So it should be used positively and not negatively, that it should not become that I don't have any ambition or aspiration anymore.
Yeah. Doc, you had this situation where after you had started Suburban, that you had an opportunity to raise capital from one of the storied investors, which is Sequoia at that point of time. How did that happen? And also like this whole sense of which is the right point to raise capital, external capital,
Great.
Why raise it?
It was a wonderful question. And I have a really nice story on this. When I was growing up in this building, I used to live at 7 bungalows. One of my childhood friends in the building is an investment banker. A big shot. But that time, we used to travel by 251 double-decker bus from 7 bungalows to Andheri station. And that's how we would have this conversation. And over a period of time, he told me one thing, that as Suburban continued to grow, and he's still a very close friend, he said, Sanjay, remember one rule: dilute as little as late. And remember, private equity is the most expensive form of capital.
Sure.
So every time I wanted to raise capital, I would go to Manish. And I would tell him, Manish, this is my situation. And Manish by that time was a wealthy investment banker. Well, he had a good amount of, he said, I can buy your company today 50% at this value. But this is not what the right time is. So Manish was the one who continued to push me, say, you continue to grow, continue to remain profitable, do what you are doing, and you keep coming back to me, and I will tell you when is the right time. So I was very fortunate. I had somebody like Manish who could guide me when is the right time. And but I kept that in mind, that dilute as little as late, use debt as much as possible, and only when all that has been exhausted and when you are at the right time. So when we were about 27 crore revenue and with a healthy profitability, that's when Manish said, now you go and raise capital.
And then at that time, did you have to present to a lot of venture capitalists? How was that process? Talk us through that journey.
So the first thing was we had to find somebody who could represent our interest. So we met multiple people, but many things in my life have happened because of good luck. So one of our patients, who's now also a dear friend, his name is also Manish. The second Manish. He told me he had raised capital just 6 months before that. And he and his wife used to come for tests, and I became, friendly with them. because I would discuss the reports with them. So the second Manish told me, okay, if you ever want to raise capital, no, you tell me. I've got the right investment banker for you. Because he had worked with Navroz, and then he introduced me to Navroz. My father and I met Navroz. It was like love at first sight. We had met many people, but we just liked the way he was. And he had never done any work in healthcare. He said, let me first work with you for about 6-8 months to understand diagnostics, understand Suburban, understand your aspirations. And I'm not going to, charge anything, but let me just understand. So he and his team worked with us for about 7-8 months. When they had the thesis ready, then they said, okay, fine, now let's build an IM and let's go out into the market and see what's available. And through Navroz, then I got introduced to VCs and Ps. And I didn't know any of these words at that time. Navroz just said, these two people will come, you have to just talk about your story. That's it. Navroz decided, what should be the valuation, who should we meet. Everything is decided by Navroz. Sequoia Capital happened to be one of those groups. Sequoia had just exited their stake from Dr. Lal Path Labs at that time. They were looking for the next, opportunity in diagnostics. They liked us. We really liked them. And then I told Navroz, I said, valuation is one thing, but I like these people.
What did you like about them? Because I think a lot of founders will find this very useful. Because I think in a sense, as founders, we feel that we are raising capital, but we are also giving equity to somebody.
Right.
We're bringing somebody into the fold of the company.
Right.
I think founders also need to evaluate the investors that they bring on.
Yeah,
I think you did that really well. What were your metrics? What were the things?
So honestly, at that time, Sandeep, it was pure gut feel.
Sure.
There was another VC fund from Hyderabad that was also, I really liked the founders. But I think then when we chose, we decided that, and Anju, my wife, who's a co-founder, both she and I, spoke about it, and both of us felt, my father was he was chairman at Suburban at that time. So three of us discussed, and we felt, I think, so I think one of the things was that they already knew the diagnostics industry. They had already done work with Dr. Lal Path Labs. So they knew about it. Second was they were also very clear that they had learned what to do and what not to do. One of the things what not to do was that don't become a pan-India player. First grow locally and create your presence in the West. Become a strong regional player first. And I think over a period of time, they also had enough faith in Anju and me that this capital is not going to get misused. So they never asked us ever, why are you using this? What are you using it for? Who do you want to hire? They were always supportive. They said, "Nee, Sanjay, you please do whatever you think is right for the business." So they were very encouraging, very supportive. They helped us create governance mechanisms, reviews, MIS. So, we learned a lot of those things. They had support in HR, they had support in IT. So we would lean to them for those kind of supports as well. So it was not just capital, but also, governance, also other functional support that we could get from them.
And would you ever have had this kind of situation where there's a difference of a viewpoint, and both well-meaning, on the way the business should be guided, right? Or the direction that the business should go in, or at the speed at which the business should grow at? Absolutely. Because with shareholder, because every fund has a life fund tenure, you have to deliver an exit to them, so they have that pressure on them. Right. How did that dynamic work out?
So that's a learning that I want to share. The first point is nobody knows your business better than you. Nobody. No fund, no external investor. Nobody knows your business better than you. I think we sometimes give a little more credit than we need to others around us. I think that was one mistake that I made. That I felt that perhaps, people advising know better than me, because we had run a very, tight ship. The reason somebody wanted to invest in us because we were growing and we were profitable, both growing and profitable. So what happened was that we sacrificed profitability for growth in the early days. We grew very rapidly. We didn't have the right team. We didn't have the right SOPs. We didn't have the right governance mechanisms. So we suffered through that period. And that perhaps was a big learning for me, that should we sacrifice one for the other? And I think bottom line is cash flow. Bottom line is free cash flow or profitability. And that's what we are seeing even today, that you can show growth, but if you don't show any profitability or at least any line to profitability, I mean, eventually people will, tune off.
Yeah.
And then we went through that J curve or U curve, as I call it, from being highly profitable, we, lost our profitability. And then sort of I stepped back and I decided that let me go back to running the company the way I used to earlier. And then we, sort of looked at costs, became a little more judicious in expansion, and slowly got back our profitability where it needed to be.
Yeah, the interesting thing is like every founder goes through their own journey too, right? This J curve.
Yeah.
And I guess life is a series of J curves, right? You get to a certain point, then again you want to reinvent, and that's when again you have to go through a new one.
Right.
Doc, I think one interesting point here is this whole shift that you made, right? As a professional doctor, doctors have this option of either running a practice or running a business and institution, right?
Right.
And there are great doctors who are running great practices, but it's centered around them. And then there are some who migrate to setting up it as an institution,
right,
which you ended up doing. What was the point at which you said that I want to move away from Suburban being a practice to being an institution? And what does it take for doctors to do that?
I think, again, like I said, luck sometimes. I could have chosen to be a surgeon because I was very good in surgery during my MBBS days. And my first choice as specialization was surgery. But somehow, I didn't get the unit or the mentor of my choice. So then I said, let me do radiology. I did not get MD at that time. I got DMRD, which could have been converted to DNB. I did not think it through. And then I got MD in pathology. So all my friends said, Nani, you're getting MD in pathology? Yeah, take it. Yeah, it's a good thing. So maybe because I took MD in pathology, and pathology is one of those branches of medicine which can allow you to do what I did, where you can institutionalize practice. Although surgeons have also done it, but I think it's probably a little easier. I was very attached to this doctor-patient interaction, but I was also equally attached to sitting behind my microscope and looking at the slides. That for me was my first love. That is what I was trained to do. I was good at that. So my father and one patient told me that if you really want to build this as an enterprise, move outside that comfort zone behind the microscope. So come from that side of the microscope to this side of the microscope. Create a process to put people behind the microscope so that you can build many more microscopes and many more people. And I think that was an insight which I got from people wiser than me, my father being one of them, and one of the patients was there.
Yeah.
And they told me that move outside your comfort zone. It took me 1 year to give up my comfort behind the microscope, hire a pathologist, train that pathologist, let that pathologist start reporting on her own. I would cross-check everything for 1 year. Of course, since then, we've built SOPs and processes where now today we have, between at Suburban, close to 50 full-time pathologists, and Dr. Lal, close to 300 full-time pathologists. Dr. Lal also started off being a pathologist himself. So I think maybe in this area of pathology, it allows you to institutionalize practice. I think the seed was sown right in the beginning when Anju and I decided we will call it Suburban Diagnostics, that it will not be related to Anju and me, but something bigger than both of us.
It didn't carry your name.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's interesting. One thing I struggle with, and maybe a lot of us do in the regular drill of our life, especially as a founder entrepreneur, when you're busy, there's so many demands on your time, and then you have to give time to family, etc. Some of these relationships do require you to invest time and effort into it. How did you manage that balance? Because that's really, for me, like I do see the value even in, and I'm not talking about commercial value, but even otherwise, there is value in relationships, like having somebody to talk to, a different point of view, it can enrich you. But how did you make the time and be able to carve out the effort for this?
Well, that's a great question, Sandeep. And I tell people this, that my role in Suburban Diagnostics gave me a vantage point where on one side you have the patient population, on the other side you have the medical population. And diagnostics in a way is a conduit that anybody, many people need to use diagnostics both ways. So patients need to use diagnostics, doctors also need to use diagnostics.
Yeah.
So I became a conduit from patients to doctors and doctors to patients. So many times patients would come and get the test done and then ask me, what do I do with this report? Who is the doctor that I can see? This doctor recommended this. Because I was always accessible to interacting with patients. I always felt that we are not giving just a report or a piece of paper. We are giving insights which are going to help mainly the doctor treat the patient better. So if I am able to add a little flavor to the report, which is beyond just black and white, then I think that's what started with, my interest in diagnostics and how I can go just beyond just giving a piece of paper or black and white reports. So then I built a relationship with patients and I also built a relationship with doctors. So many times doctors would ask, like a family physician would ask, Sanjay, this patient, I've got this report. Who do you think is the right specialist that I should, approach? So gradually it became a part of my role at Suburban that I would create a channel of direction from patients to doctors and doctors to within doctors. The ultimate was when doctors would tell me that I'm sending this patient to you. These are his symptoms. You decide what tests need to be done. And then you tell me what I should do after the report.
Wow.
That was validation. So I think it became naturally for me. The true test of it happened on 24th of March 2020.
This is during COVID, I guess.
First day of a COVID test done by Suburban Diagnostics. Also, my birthday, 24th of March, my 54th birthday. I must have received close to 350 calls, not to wish me, but because somehow my number was given as part of the BMC helpline for anybody who wanted to do a COVID test. When they enrolled Suburban to be one of the labs to do COVID testing, there were only 4 labs that got approved at the first lot of labs, and we were fortunate to be one of them. Instead of giving our helpline number or our board number, they gave my cell number.
Wow.
So on that birthday of mine, I must have got 350 calls asking about how to get a COVID test done. When I reflect and I think back, I said, I can't have a better birthday gift than that, that I was able to help so many people make a difference in their lives. So for me, this has become natural. I met somebody yesterday who's a founder of a mental health company. Their family member is going through a personal health crisis. I said, forget that. Tell me how I can help your family member first. We'll get to the other part afterwards. So it's become natural for me that, how can I help? Because healthcare is such a black box.
Yeah.
You don't know what's happening inside.
Yeah.
If I can demystify that, and if I can channelize the conduit from A to B and B to A, I just feel I'm just adding value in some way.
So, Doc, on one hand, there is this whole social aspect to the work that pathologists do. But at the same time, you also had the pressure of running a business, right? And it has to be profitable. We have to make sure that we are delivering value and yet extracting value. At any points of time, was there a conflict or something that you had to manage as a entrepreneur running in this particular segment?
So 2-3 questions that you've asked in this, but let me answer what comes straight to mind is conflict. Never. Never. I I don't think I've ever even thought for a millisecond to cut corners. First is do right by the patient. Nothing else matters. There must be so many times where I was not sure about. There was one hepatitis C test. We had some problem with the kit. We were looking at the results and, I was not really 100% certain. Every patient who did the test on that day with that kit, we called them back and told them that we have a doubt with this kit. Please come back and we would like to retest. Maybe the final result was not very different than the initial result. But I was not convinced that I'm doing something, I don't want to take a chance because it's somebody's life. So there have been numerous instances where, we don't bother to think twice if I have to call the patient back. I want to recheck your sample. I want to do it again. I want to, do something extra. Nothing. Do right by the patient is the bottom line. No compromise on that. Whatever it takes. No cost is enough to make sure that the patient is taken care of well.
And that in the long run would have translated into returns, while you may not have thought about the returns as an aspect of it. But this is a trust-based thing.
I was going to say, finally, it's the trust. Doctors trust you, patients trust you, that this lab will ensure that they don't miss out on anything. They do right by the patient. I'll give you an example. Urine culture test is a very common test done, especially for women, because women are prone to urine infections. So we realized that there is a lot of data that can be used. So we did a analysis of about 50,000 cultures. So we culled out data from the urine cultures and we gave it back to doctors. There was a effort and a cost from our side. But what happened was it allowed the doctors to actually treat patients better. So you have infection and you are giving an antibiotic. You don't have time to wait for a report. So we told them that which antibiotic is working and which is not working in your backyard. So if you have to prescribe empirically, prescribe this antibiotic, this is more likely to work than the other. No real benefit to us, but we use data which we could help the doctors. Now that built a relationship. Every doctor said, we don't get local data, we get international data. Local data is not available. And that started our journey into data analytics, and how we could give data back to doctors and to patients and engage with them in a more meaningful manner.
Yeah, I think that's the amazing part of this whole thing, that there is so much impact that you could do with people's lives. I think there is this almost like this journey that you can visualize, where you were a domain expert, started running a team, and therefore started building culture. And I'll go deeper into that, into how you lived that culture yourself, and then became a capital allocator. And it's almost like this classic journey of a domain expert becoming a founder CEO, which is very visible. What were the cultural aspects of building Suburban? Like, at which point did you decide that this is the kind of people that we want to bring on? And what were you doing to show them that how to live the life at Suburban?
So one core value that we eventually articulated, and when I write my book, that's going to be the title of my book. It's called Exceed the Brief. And how I explain that is the difference between ordinary and extraordinary is that little bit extra.
Yeah.
So in everything that you do, can you exceed the brief? Can you do a little bit more than what is required to create that differentiator? So for me, everything was around customer centricity and giving that customer that experience. Because you have to realize in healthcare, nobody comes to you because they want to come to you.
Yeah.
Everybody comes to you because they have to come to you. There is a negative sentiment which is pushing people to use healthcare. First is acknowledging that I know why you're here. 50% of the anxiety of the patient goes away right then and there, that they know why I'm here. And then you take that little bit extra effort to make it so that tomorrow, if they need to, it becomes they want to come to us rather than they have to come to us. And that is what sort of was the genesis of everything that we did at Suburban.
Mm.
And make sure what's good for your family, then only it is good for the patient. If it is not good for your family, it's not good for the patient. If the bathroom cannot be used by your family member, it cannot be used by the patient. If the bed on which the patient lies is not hygienic enough for your mother, it's not good enough for the patient. If you're collecting blood, make sure that your mother enjoys that, the needle as much as then only will the so do best by the patient and do everything that is required. And the other element was strive towards zero error, because decisions are made. 70% of decisions in healthcare are made out of diagnostic testing.
Mm-hmm.
So doctors rely on the reports that we give. So make sure quality is not compromised. So finally, there were two aspects to it: quality and care. So what became precision and care?
Mm.
That is what we stood for finally over the years, is that make sure you give precise reports and make sure you give a caring service so that people, don't feel intimidated by the environment.
So the extra was the experience in a sense, like
Absolutely.
that the customer
See,
was
everybody does testing.
getting.
How do you differentiate yourself from anybody else?
Yeah.
Consistency of quality
Yeah.
and consistency of experience.
That's an amazing insight, because, while you're really good at what you do, what actually put you over the line was this incremental investment in experience. Because
Yes.
it's not that this is just a good to have. You must have had to put money behind improving the experience.
Oh,
right?
yes, absolutely.
It's just not like a good thing to say, but you have to actually put capital to ensure that that experience is really good.
Small example. I would always use the bathroom that the patients used. So it was a testing for me. Now, I hired early on one guy. After every patient would come out, this guy had to clean the bathroom.
Yeah. And
so make sure before the next patient goes in, the bathroom is clean. Hiring that person was a cost.
Yeah.
But at least I was confident and comfortable that no patient had to use an unhygienic bathroom.
I can see so many parallels in health and wealth management that, as you're talking through this. Doc, at one point then, you had the best business opportunity with COVID emerging. It was a hard time. Obviously, COVID was terrible for the time that it happened and people that it impacted. But for Suburban, it was a great explosion of business in many ways. And at that point, you decided to sort of allow the business to be now taken over by Dr. Lal Path Labs. What was the thought process behind it? And how did you deal with this whole sense of letting your baby go into the world in a sense?
Yeah. I think the first obligation that I had was to Sequoia. Sequoia had been a very patient partner, and you just mentioned earlier that every fund has a lifetime. So they were very patient with me.
How long had it been since they were around?
So they invested in October, November of 2012.
So it's already 8-9 years.
And they exited in November 21. So 9 years, which is fairly long for any private equity fund.
Yeah.
But they were very patient with me. So one was my obligation that whenever you borrow money from somebody, please make sure you give it back to them also. I think the second was the opportunity to maybe sign off on a high. When you retire, perhaps you say that, I don't want to end up on a losing streak and then retire. So that was the other thought. I think the third thought was for the almost 30 years that Anju and I ran Suburban, I was always switched on. I could never switch off. It was just all-consuming 24/7 passion. I was just completely consumed with it. Maybe I think, it definitely had an impact on my personal life. Everybody at home knew that in my top 10 priorities, they didn't stand anywhere. Suburban was in the top 10. They only fought for what is 11 and 12.
Yeah.
So, I was, like I said, constantly switched on. So I thought maybe this is another opportunity to look at, life 2.0. Also, a close friend, told me that, do you think healthcare or diagnostics will remain the same for the next 30 years? And both your children are directly or indirectly in healthcare. Maybe you can create a new opportunity for them, which is more futuristic and something that they can, take on. I knew one of my daughters was definitely not going to be part of the business. The other one was still studying and still building her own life. So I also felt there should be no pressure or obligation for them to have to take this up even if they didn't want to. So I think there were a multiple of reasons that, made me take this decision. But till date, I question myself. Was it the right decision? Did I do the right thing? It's like, as you said, letting go of a child. So, yeah, I mean, I still question myself.
How did life change with all of that wealth coming into, and suddenly you're dealing with this huge bank balance, thinking about how to grow this money? What was going on at that point?
Again, I've been very fortunate. My largest paycheck before starting Suburban was 5,700 rupees, which was as a lecturer at JJ Hospital.
Yeah.
That's the largest paycheck I've ever got. Money has never been a driver or a objective. It's an outcome for me. I've always believed in doing good things, good work, helping people, ensuring they do get better, and continue to focus on your own strengths. I think Anju has been extremely supportive from day one. Whenever I've needed something as an investment for Suburban or otherwise, she's managed to make it happen for me. So she's always looked into the finance side of things. And as you know, I have never had to really worry about it. So, and I've always had family support. My parents played a big role initial days, continue to play support. My father is continued to be, he is the wind beneath our wings, so to say. So I think great family support, great environment. So, I never had to really think about money as a, that, will I need to make ends meet in that sense. So from that point of view, nothing has changed. I think money is an opportunity to express yourself and do things in a bigger way, perhaps. And that's why whatever is the wealth that we created is being managed by Anju and my sister, who's the CEO of the family office, because they understand this better. I don't look into this. They manage the investment policy. They manage, where to invest, how to invest. But I'm learning this now. So I'm spending a lot more time meeting people, understanding, what does it mean to invest. A friend of mine told me that if you get hooked on to making money and multiplying money and making money work for you, there is no better kick. I haven't reached that stage yet.
Yeah.
I think I'm, it's, like I said, money is an outcome.
Yeah.
And I'm meeting so many wonderful people, who have made tons of money, but are also doing great level of work. And I think that's the motivation for me, that how do you channelize this into doing something bigger and better? And then within the family office, we have 3 terms. So Shubhan Ventures, that's the family office, stands for invest, grow, create.
Okay.
So Anju is the invest. Seema, my sister, is the grow. And I am the one who's looking to create something.
Incredible.
So I'm still focused on, because I've always been an entrepreneur at heart and building something. I'm still doing that even now.
And one thing that I can say with absolute clarity now is that the moment the money hits the account, the excitement is over for folks like yourselves, because they want to now think about creating the next big thing.
So I'll just interrupt you here. I recently gave a talk and I was very excited. I got my first opportunity to speak at SP Jain Management Institute. And I said the same thing. I said, money does not bring happiness.
Yeah.
So, when all this happened, everybody said, hey, your life is done, you're set.
Yeah.
When you lose that core, which was Suburban for me, money can't fill that core.
Yeah.
People said, you've got so many hobbies, so many passions, let that be the one. I said, all that is peripheral.
Yeah.
which was around a very solid core. Peripherals can never become core.
Yeah.
So I'm in pursuit of still rebuilding, recreating a fresh core.
Yeah.
That is what is going to give me happiness. And Navroz is helping me. He says, Sanjay, I know you very well. Until you roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty, even if it is a small venture, nothing will ever give you as much satisfaction as that.
Yeah.
So for me, building, adding value, doing things is far more enjoyable. You know, it's important to have money. And maybe people will say that this is very hypocritical because you have the money, you can say all these things. But if people have known me for the last 30 years, nothing has changed in the way I live today. Nothing.
And let's go into that, because I know you as a very like a man of experiences, right? There is a certificate here of the Arctic where you're driven there. You're a DJ. You've done all of those activities. Like, first of all, how did you manage to do it with running an enterprise like Suburban, number one? And how has that come together now in the new role that you have? Are you able to give it more time? Are you actually enjoying that more?
So, I have a business card and I love carrying business cards, unlike most people who like
I don't have one.
Yeah. So everything is digital now. But I say life is two sides of a business card. There is your professional side, but on the flip side, I have my personal side. So I'm very much, I bear my heart and I sort of, I wear my heart on my sleeve, so to say.
Yeah.
So on my flip side, I have what makes me as an individual. So healthcare will always be a big part of me. Healthcare and entrepreneurship will always be a big part of me. So that is there. But other interests, like I love to travel and I love to take photographs. I'm a photographer. So my trip to Antarctica was largely a photography trip. And because it was a long, arduous travel, Anju decided not to come. So it was just me and my camera for almost 3 weeks. And I've taken some brilliant photographs, managed to have a photography exhibition.
Oh, wow.
Again, that exhibition was more to just showcase what I've done. Proceeds of that exhibition went to charity, not for any commercial gain. So continue to build my skills as a photographer. I love music. I curate a playlist every Sunday that I send out to friends and family. I'm hoping that I'll become a more active DJ. So when Ankita, my older daughter, got married, I was a surprise DJ for the first night. So I'm looking forward to becoming a better DJ. Sports is a big passion with me. So whenever we travel, we try and combine it with a sporting event. So recently we traveled to London. We got a chance to watch Wimbledon. So that was a great experience. We got to watch a Coldplay concert. So it's these experiences that, perhaps but Anju and I have seen so many concerts. We've been to a U2 concert multiple times. We've seen practically every Indian Bollywood singer live. So we enjoy those things. So I think maybe I'm able to experience it a little more now, but that will still remain peripheral. It'll never become, I'm still looking for my new core.
That's interesting. Doc, I think on this whole, like what's happening in the healthcare ecosystem, right? Technology is likely going to play a much bigger role than it ever has.
Right.
What does it mean for somebody wanting to build a career in healthcare? And I know that there is one aspect of that human care that only a individual person can deliver to the patient. But then there are so many other opportunities which potentially will get taken away by technology, or at least that's the going in thinking that.
No, it won't happen like that. In healthcare, it won't happen. And I think the first aspect that people need to be maybe realistic about is that technology is not here to replace you. Technology is here to augment you. And let me give you a simple example. When we started Suburban Diagnostics, we had a cell counter. A cell counter is where you do a CBC test, your hemoglobin count, WBC count, platelet count, all those things. So you would put in a sample and the machine would give out those results. Then you would take that sample, you would put it onto a slide and you would see it under the microscope. So then every patient there'll be 10 patients, I would see 10 slides. Today at Suburban Diagnostics, maybe on a busy day, we could do 2000 CBCs. Physically impossible to see every slide in that manner. So today the technology has done in such a way that the machines that were only giving basic results today are able to flag what is normal and what is abnormal in what you will see under the microscope.
Mm-hmm.
So we have built that level of confidence that whatever is clearly normal, we don't need to see it.
Mm-hmm.
So that we are able to focus more on what is genuinely abnormal, where our expertise will come in hand. So we are not wasting our time in looking at things which technology can help filter,
Mm-hmm.
but is also giving us the opportunity of putting more time where our human attention needs to be given. So that is the proper use of technology.
Mm-hmm.
Not that technology is taking away. So I can now, instead of doing 20 CBCs, I can do 2000 CBCs without compromising on the quality and still being able to see those 20 slides or 30 slides or 50 slides that need my attention.
Mm-hmm.
So that is how technology is actually going to augment healthcare and not take away from what we want to do in healthcare.
And probably it will get better for the end patient, because what it seems like is that with so much data available, the analytics and pathology labs can derive on top of it, and therefore be able to preempt
Absolutely.
some of these.
I gave you that example of urine culture that we
Yes.
did. Just think about it, that you are a patient and I have your longitudinal data. I can send you customized triggers only for you, which is not relevant to anybody else. That Sandeep, based on your last 12 months of tests, we are finding this trending this way, that trending this way. You have not done this test for the last, maybe 24 months. Maybe it's time for you to come and do this. So we're trying to give more personalized, individualized triggers which are more meaningful to you than to generally say, get your sugar checked. Now, you may not have diabetes. You may not even be pre-diabetic, but you may have some other issue which is more relevant to you. So using data analytics, we are able to personalize and individualize the communication, make it more relevant, more meaningful.
And how do doctors keep up with this? Because they're running a practice, they're handling patients day to day. How do they keep themselves aware of all of these changes that are happening and potentially how AI will affect or augment them? Is there any way that they can stay abreast?
So again, coming back to relationships, there are multiple relationships that work when you're in a diagnostic lab. One is relationship with your staff. Second, relationship with your patients. Third, relationship with your doctors. Fourth, which is often not looked at, is relationship with your channel partners or vendors, as we call. Two words that I don't like is employee and vendors. So team member and channel partners. I think a large part of my success is due to the relationships I have been able to maintain with my channel partners, who then become, platforms or channels for you to get exposed to something new. So when we started Suburban, we had very rudimentary but automated equipments. Few years down the line, one of the channel partners came and showed me this futuristic looking technology. I said, Jignesh, yeah, this is way beyond what I can even think of. He's saying, nahi, doctor, you have to see it. This is good for you. We started looking at it. Today, we are one of the largest users of that technology in Suburban. So if you maintain that relationship, if you are open to listening to people, and if you give them that respect, they will be the ones to, expose you to things which you may not. So that is one. Second is peer-to-peer learning. Very important that I read something yesterday only. Somebody was saying that knowledge, if not used and not shared, is wasted. If you have some knowledge, share it.
You can't hoard it.
Share it. Hoard it, yes. Yeah. The more you share it, the sharper it gets. So if you create that peer-to-peer learning, and of course, if you do good work and you become recognized, then you get a chance to travel for conferences. You meet interesting people. You listen to and you continue to read. I think it's very important to keep yourself updated.
Yeah.
So I think these are multiple ways in which you keep yourself moving in the right direction.
No, this again I can relate with a lot because I think in a sense that the industry where we come from, and you alluded to that, is kind of adversarial. But when it comes to being a founder, there are so many learnings that you can have from other founders, and especially in the technology ecosystem, there is this overall sense of sharing that we are all building something together. So sometimes founders candidly talk about the problems that they are facing, and then for us, it's a sort of a thing that we know that this is probably going to come to us a few years down the line, where somebody who is many years ahead of us is talking about that problem. I need to anticipate it and work towards it. So absolutely a big fan of peer-to-peer learning.
I'll give you example of an actual case. Dr. Nilesh Shah, president of Metropolis Labs. Metropolis, one of the largest players in the country.
And a competitor too.
And a competitor.
Yeah.
But my relationship with Nilesh is brilliant till today. We rely on each other. Nilesh, I'm buying this equipment. Have you used it? Yes. He'll give me his input. If Nilesh says something, I don't need to think about it. Nilesh will call me and say, Doc, I'm looking at this equipment. What is your experience on this? And he's openly spoken about it. If Dr. Arora has validated the equipment, I don't even need to ask about it. So many such experiences I have. There's Dr. Jariwala in Borivali. Brilliant pathologist, brilliant person. So I've never been shy of putting my hand up and saying, I need your help. I think if you are able to express your vulnerability and say, I need your help, people will reciprocate and do the same. And that when you don't have a wall, when there is no wall, you can easily build communication. It becomes a two-way street.
Yeah, absolutely. So Doc, now that you're managing the family office, overseeing that, you built a setup around it, how often do you actually check the portfolio? And what's the thought process behind? Do you look at the total number, or do you refresh it every day, every month? What goes on behind the big numbers that you see on the dashboard?
So actually, it's just from 1st of June that I have started spending full time at the family office. Till end of May, I had my full-time role with Dr. Lal.
That's right.
They were very kind to allow me to move out of that, allow me to focus on the family office. So it's been just over 2 months that I've been actually focused on this. And a lot of that time has been spent in understanding and meeting and learning. Like I said, my meeting with Weber is still pending.
Yeah.
So I'm making notes, I'm learning. I think as a group, we do our monthly review, Seema, Anju and I. We also do a review with the managers that we work with. So I've had some individual meetings and some group meetings. I'm still learning. I think whatever are the good practices that I've seen at Suburban and at Dr. Lal, I'm trying to see how I can learn and put those good practices into place at Suburban Ventures also.
Sure.
So it's still work in progress, but I'm learning that how much should be equity, how much should be debt. What's the taxation on this? What are the alternates? And I'm meeting younger people, who are much sharper and brighter. The more younger people you meet, I think your mind gets stimulated even more. So it's a learning for me. I'm still not there, but I'm getting there gradually.
But Doc, how is the experience of being a few crores up and a few crores down? How do you react to those kind of situations?
So I think I made it very clear, both to the family office as well as to the managers that we work with. For me, this is a second innings. And I'm looking at it as a 25-year journey and not a 2-year journey. Like in any business, it's never going to be a straight line, right? There will be ups and downs.
Yeah.
So I think I'm learning to accept that also, that even in this trajectory of managing wealth, there will be, some turbulence will be there. And I feel because I have, run a business that has, never been
a linear
easy going. I think those learnings will help me in being able to navigate some of the ups and downs that, we will encounter over a period of time.
Yeah.
And I think I must give credit to Seema and Anju, as well as the wealth manager, that they've built a structure which is fairly, I would not say aggressive or conservative, but somewhere in between, where they've tried to minimize this turbulence so that our initial experience is not bad. It may not be the best, but it's also not detrimental, so that we don't get overawed by the situation that, oh God, what's happening. So I think a lot of credit goes to the investment policy that has been made by Seema and Anju, and also the advice that we've got from the wealth managers, and be able to give our initial 1-2 years a fairly smooth run. I think once you get that experience, you also get a little better at taking decisions then.
I guess the learning for all of us, Doc, is that investment management at one level is about return maximization. But if that is the only objective, then we'll end up getting things wrong. Because one thing that, like, to just give you a very simplistic thought around it, that we know that in the long term, equities is going to be the best asset class. But often if we deploy all the capital into equities and the markets fall, I will exit the portfolio at the worst time possible. Right? And then the compounding will get broken, and then the outcome will remain a pipe dream.
Correct.
So I think some of it is like real psychological, the ability to understand and empathize with what the investor is going through in the journey. And which is why I keep coming back to this sense that it's very familiar, very similar to how a doctor would probably go about it, right? Because
so my thesis is that in 25 years, how many doubling cycles I can have.
Yeah.
That is my broad strategy, if I can call it that.
Yeah.
So it's not about looking on a day-to-day, week-to-week, month-to-month, but in 25 years, how many doubling cycles can I have?
Yeah.
Can I have 4? Can I have 5? And what will it take to have, whether it's 4 or 5 or 3, what goes into creating these doubling cycles?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic way of thinking about it, because, if you double your money every 5 years, your money is growing 2 to the power 5 in this time frame, right? Which is almost 32 times or more.
So I'm just simplifying it. I know I can't do the math the way you can, but I'm just looking at it that what is my doubling cycle?
Yeah.
I know it is going to be somewhere between 5 and 10 years.
Yeah.
Now, what can I do to bring it closer to 5?
Yeah.
Can it be 6? Can it be 7? I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I'm still learning that. And I think that's my thesis today.
Yeah.
That if I start with 10, where will I be in 25 years?
Yeah. I wish more people would think like that, because that goes to long term and it goes to compounding.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's interesting. Doc, India is one of the fastest growing large economies today. The per capita income is rising, and one of the easiest things to think about is the fact that healthcare in India will expand and grow.
Right.
If somebody is a professional today aspiring to get into this ecosystem, what are the big opportunities, the top 2 or 3 things that they should do, or the segments that they should think about entering?
So I think India, there's a huge demand supply gap. Majority of the quality healthcare is in urban areas where majority of the consumers are in the rural.
Yeah.
So it's a huge skew towards the urban and less towards the rural. So I think one is equitable distribution or giving better access. So if there are any models, any channels that can give better access to healthcare, I think technology plays a big role there. And we saw that in COVID. Of course, it's tapered off to a large extent, but I think creating models that can take healthcare to the people. So I think that's where point of care testing, for example, or primary healthcare combined with point of care testing, because I'm diagnostic, so I'm just maybe leaning more towards that. But the primarily talking about taking healthcare to the people. So building better access.
Sure.
Second is affordability. India is grossly under penetrated in terms of health insurance, and majority, I would say 80% of healthcare expenses are out of pocket. So how do you make healthcare good quality and yet affordable? So I think affordability, finding mechanisms to make healthcare more affordable. So this whole concept of generic drugs, how do you make them equitable with whatever is branded? That could be, another area which we can look at. How do you create more affordability? Third is, of course, what does the future of healthcare look like? So I think if I look at my own journey, uh, my thesis also was on cancer. My daughter's thesis was also cancer because she's part of Tata Cancer Hospital. I did a very basic, looking at slides and staining it. She's doing digital pathology. So how can you leverage technology, the power of digital genomics, molecular diagnostics? We used to classify tumors in a particular way. Today, tumors are classified based on their molecular configuration or makeup, the molecular biomarkers. So I think looking at genomics, molecular diagnostics, because of COVID, everybody knows what is RT-PCR.
Yeah.
Now, how do you leverage the power of RT-PCR in every field of healthcare?
Yeah.
So I think access, affordability, technology, last but not the least, is data. There's so much. India is a powerhouse of health data.
Yeah.
Now, how do you make that data on a common platform and then cull it out? The kind of insights that we got during COVID helped us manage COVID better. Now, if you use that same thesis on using healthcare data across the country, I think people are doing the digi-lockers, health lockers, this whole Ayushman Bharat, National Digital Health Mission, creating a UID, for every individual, health ID for every individual. All this is in that direction, that we make healthcare data so strong. I feel, my gut feel is health data will become one of the strengths of India because of the width and depth of each type of medical condition.
Yeah.
Culling out health data will become a big opportunity.
And I suspect with rising per capita income, the spending on preventive healthcare versus curative,
yes,
I think is.
I missed that. So, throughout the entire 30 years of Suburban, we've always anchored preventive healthcare to a large extent. I think COVID accelerated that, movement that majority of the people that we encounter are well. Less than 10% of the population is ill. Yet our entire healthcare ecosystem addresses only that 10%, does not address the 90%. So how do we look at the wellness and helping people remain healthy?
Yeah.
I think that's a big opportunity.
Yeah. No, exciting times, Doctor.
Oh, yes.
Doctor, for me, the biggest takeaway today was that you're a man with a wealth of relationships. I think if there'll be a term to describe you, it would be that. You built this virtuous cycle around relationships, and I think that's something for all of us to learn from. And I think the other thing I take away is there's no excuse not to have relationships. Somebody as busy as you, somebody who's as occupied running a business, having a family, can invest into relationships. I'm sure all of us can. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank
Doctor.
you. Thank you, Sandeep. This was a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.